It's the All Things Strange podcast. I am your host, Agent Anderson. Come along as I examine UFO sightings, conspiracies, and all things strange. You can find all of our wonderful links in the description on the Linktree, where you can find our Discord, our Patreon, our merchandise, and more. This week's episode, Poltergeists. You've probably heard about them. Before we get started, though, we've got 2 tiers of patronage for you. The first tier, coming in at $3, will get you early access, after hours when available, and bonus episodes. The second tier, coming in at $5, allows you to vote on upcoming topics such as this one. This time around, the vote was between poltergeists and psychic abilities. I thought it would be, a contested vote. I thought some people would want one more than the other or something. I don't know. But it was 100% voted for poltergeists, so everybody wanted this topic. Usually, there's a little bit of a split going on in the vote, but not this time around. Well, anyways, this week's bonus episode, I think I'm going to do more on the estimate of the situation. And if that's not enough for the full episode, then I'll go over a little bit more, older 1940s UFO type stuff. All right, let's get to it. You've heard of ghosts. You've heard of poltergeists. Some ghosts are cute, so, Casper or whatever. Some of them are sneaky and shy. You try to get a glimpse of them and they disappear or hide behind a wall or something. Some of them seem to be stuck to a particular location. They only appear at this place. Other ghosts seem able to move around, even hitch a ride with certain people. But then there are poltergeists. These ghosts aren't cute or shy. Some people even go as far as to say that they're evil spirits. The name itself comes from German. It means Polter, or noisy or rumbling sound, and Geist, ghost or spirit. So it translates to noisy ghost, rumbling ghost, or spirit, something along those lines. There are plenty of hauntings from all over the world that fit this description from different cultures, but for whatever reason, we've adopted the German name for it. The typical ghost sighting is fleeting, mysterious, maybe a little creepy. You kind of see something, maybe you see something out of the corner of your eye, or when you're reviewing photographs, you notice somebody in the photograph that wasn't there at the time, somebody who isn't supposed to be there. We've talked about ghosts on this show before, and they usually aren't harmful. However, poltergeists are a completely different experience. They are loud, obnoxious, and maybe even dangerous. They don't hide around corners or vanish when you look at them. They want to be noticed. Of course, they don't always have some visible form. Sometimes it's just noises and whatnot. They're known mostly for the noises they make. It's in the name. But people have reported all sorts of things. So the noises reported from poltergeists are loud banging noises, footsteps, whispers or vocal noises such as speech, moaning, screaming, or, whatever seems the most terrifying probably. All those sorts of things. But they're also known for moving objects. Sometimes they will hover objects. Sometimes they will pick them up or put them down. Sometimes they'll move them around. Sometimes this happens when you're looking. Sometimes it happens when you're out of the room. And they're even known for throwing things around a room or even at a witness. I guess in this case it would be a victim, right? That sounds mildly annoying if it's, a stuffed animal, and potentially lethal if it's, kitchen utensils. So that's, you know, probably the most dangerous type of ghost there is the poltergeist. People have also reported being physically touched in some way. Everything from feeling somebody brushing up against them, or even in extreme cases, witnesses have experienced violent forces like pushing, hitting, or tripping. And just imagine what would happen if you experienced this walking down the stairs and a poltergeist pushed you. I didn't find any cases specifically of people walking down the stairs, but come on, you know, I guarantee if you look, you can find somebody who died from being pushed down the stairs. We'll go over a case a little bit later where somebody did die, but it wasn't from the stairs. Some witnesses even report bite marks. So there are all sorts of physical manifestations of poltergeists, but they're also known to have electrical effects. Flickering lights, radios, or other electrical equipment can be messed up by their activity. Sometimes it happens in isolation. Other times it appears as if an invisible hand is toggling switches and turning knobs. Appliances, televisions, cars, anything with electricity can be affected. And in some cases, they've been known to cause spontaneous fire to break out in the house. Very dangerous indeed. Some people also report foul odors that go along with poltergeists. Now, all of this sounds pretty terrifying. Physical harm isn't always reported, though. It seems that most cases, people just get scared. They're not actually harmed physically. Interestingly, a lot of cases happen just for one person in the household. If there's somebody else in the room, then the activity does not occur. If somebody enters the room while the activity is happening, then it stops. There's a lot of different variation for poltergeist hauntings. Not all of the stuff is reported in every case, and there are lots of things reported that I haven't mentioned yet. There's not really any consensus on what causes these hauntings. Some believe it's an angry ghost or spirit, maybe somebody who was murdered, or somebody who died in a horrible, painful way, or maybe somebody who left with unfinished business and doesn't want to let go. Other people believe that these hauntings could be caused not by ghosts, but by evil entities like demons. Other people, though on kind of a little bit on the more skeptical side, some people speculate that a natural phenomena could cause the hauntings. Shifting houses, changing temperature could definitely explain some of the noises reported. I once lived in a house that when you turned on the hot water, it sounded like water was dripping in the ceiling. There were pipes in the ceiling. They're, PVC water pipes. I would hear it. I would climb up into the attic because, you don't want to let water damage go unchallenged. That could cause a lot of trouble for a house. I'd go up there and I couldn't find it. I'd look everywhere, but it sounded like water dripping, like 100%. So I even called a plumber and they said it's just the pipes expanding from the hot water and that makes that dripping noise. But it didn't sound like a creaking or anything that you would expect from expanding pipes. It was really weird. A lot of other natural explanations have been proposed, such as, ball lightning, believe it or not, maybe tectonic or some other earth movement. People have proposed even water currents underneath of the house in some sort of underground stream. All sorts of things have been proposed, some of them more plausible than others. But when you have something like ball lightning, which is extremely rare, it would be hard to explain repeat incidents using something like that hardly ever happens. And I'm not aware of any witnesses with, multiple ball lightning sightings. Others think that maybe psychic phenomena like telekinesis could be the root cause of some of these sightings. Many of the victims or the primary witnesses are either children or young adults and usually have some sort of stress or trouble in their lives, and especially children going through puberty seem to be pretty common in these cases. Maybe they are developing or unlocking some psychic ability that they don't even know that they have as they develop and go through puberty, but as they get older, either that ability fades or they learn how to control it either consciously or subconsciously. So that's another idea of what might be causing some of these sightings. Hardcore skeptics say that all of the cases can be explained by some sort of hoax. And I agree that some cases probably can be explained by hoaxes, but maybe not all of them. Maybe there are different causes to different cases, since there is such a wide variety of descriptions. Maybe some of them are just angry ghosts, others are demons, and some of them are even plasma entities having a laugh. I don't know. Ball lightning type deal, right? Who knows? There are certain ways one might get rid of a poltergeist. So if you've ever have one infesting your house, don't give up. You don't necessarily have to move. Surprisingly, experts say just asking nicely to leave you alone might work. I don't see why it would, but I suppose it can't hurt to ask. So if, before hiring a priest or something, you might try that. Say, hey man, I don't like it when you throw stuff at me and break my house. Could you just leave me alone, please? And then maybe the ghost realizes, oh, okay, I guess this guy's nice. I'll leave him alone. But mostly the solution to these hauntings proposed is some kind of ritual cleansing. Perhaps a priest blessing or exorcism, maybe burning some sage or some other type of ritual. Some cases, the poltergeist won't leave when asked and doesn't respond to cleansing rituals. These ones are stubborn, but people report that they will fade over time. The encounters become less frequent until they stop altogether. Well, that's kind of a race against time because you might get a scissors to your eye before they stop haunting, right? So you're taking a real risk there. That's kind of the basic background of what poltergeists are, how they're different from regular ghosts, is real general stuff. But let's get to some specific cases. There are tons and tons of cases, both major published cases and personal anecdotes you can find online. People who have one experience and then nothing after that. People who have multiple repeat experiences. It's endless. I found so many. Sometimes when I'm looking into a case, preparing notes for an episode, sometimes I worry that I'm not going to have enough material and I'll have to come up with another topic to sort of bookend it or to, add on. I've done that before with topics on rare occasion when I don't find enough material. I don't want a 20-minute episode, so I will include another topic that is adjacent or similar to that one, maybe something similar that happened in a different place or, a similar paranormal topic or similar to whatever the main topic is. It doesn't happen that often, surprisingly, but with this one, there's so many cases, even major cases. I mean, just do a search and you can easily find like 20 or 30 major cases. And then if you want to go look on paranormal forums, Reddit, wherever, there's literally an endless number of these cases that you can find online. It's pretty cool. A lot of them might seem like they are fiction, but a lot of them are fun stories regardless. And some of them do seem like genuine experiences. So I'm hoping to get to 3 major cases today. We'll see how the time goes. I don't know if I'll even get through all 3 of those. If I don't finish them up, then I'll finish them up in like an after hours or something. We'll see. So let's get to it without any further ado. First up, One of my favorite, I know anybody who hears me say, I don't know why I say that. Anybody who hears me say that probably wants to smack me when I say a do like that. I want to smack myself. First up, one of my favorite hauntings, the Amityville case or the Amityville horror. It was the first novel I ever read when I was a kid. I'm not talking about like short stories or whatever. I mean, first full adult novel. And of course, before this in elementary school, I read like, Bridge to Terabithia and all those horrible stories they make kids read, get you all depressed. It's like, come on, man, leave the kids alone. They got their whole life ahead of them to be depressed. Just let them enjoy their childhood, before crushing it with, soul destroying books. um, but this is the first like adult novel I read, and I remember reading it in middle school, probably 6th or 7th grade. So, probably not the sort of stuff a kid should be reading. I remember feeling the book was a little slow paced and that it was just okay. And the reason I read it was because it was summer, I was bored, and I just picked it up and read it. I figured, why not? I got nothing else to do all day. The book is supposedly based on a true story, and then the book itself was made into a movie, which had many sequels. I think they've made like 10 or 15 movies in the Amityville universe. It's turned into a genuine media franchise with books and movies and probably comic books and who knows what else. The picture of the Amityville house is a staple of classic horror. If you've gone to a VHS store when you were a kid, or Blockbuster or whatever, you go to the horror section, you would recognize this picture. It's got like those windows that kind of look like eyes from a distance, and it's like lit up. If you've seen it, you'll recognize it immediately. It looks super creepy. And if you haven't, go check it out. Google Amityville House, Amityville, and it will come up. It's kind of fun if you want to get just a little bit spooked out, a little sprinkling of spookiness for your October season. The house itself is located at 112 Ocean Avenue, Amityville, Long Island, New York. So if you want to go harass the current residents, no, don't do that. Or, you want to go visit it or whatever. Actually, you know what? Let me see here. I'm going to look it up on Zillow or Redfin or whatever. I want to see what the value of this house is, just out of curiosity. I mean, it's in New York, so chances are it's going to be expensive. And it's supposed to have a lot of square footage. It's supposed to be a big house. I mean, it looks big. Let's see. So it says here that the estimated value is $1.182 million. 4 beds, 2 baths, 2,400 square feet. That's not too big. I mean, it's a big house, but it's not like a mansion. Built in 1902. Nice. And it looks like, wow. According to this graph, in 2016, it was worth about $600,000, and it has doubled since then to about 1.2 million or whatever. And it was sold in 2019 for $700,000. Yeah, no, we don't have an inflation problem. We are not experiencing hyperinflation with housing doubling in price every few years. No problem at all. Let me see if there's a description. This property is off market. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't really have a whole lot of information. There's nothing on here that says it's the Amityville house. So that's kind of interesting. Maybe it's the wrong house. I don't know. It looks like, I Googled it. It looks like the right house, but who the heck knows? Anyways, enough of that. Let's get back to the episode. Maybe I should edit some of that crap out. I don't know. Whatever. All right. So on November 13th, 1974, an event took place that's known as the DeFeo murders. A 23-year-old man named Ronald DeFeo Jr. shot and killed 6 members of his family in the house while they slept. How did he kill all of them while they slept? I didn't take extensive notes on this particular case because we're more interested in the haunting, right? Not necessarily the murder, but how did he shoot them and the other people didn't wake up? I don't know. Maybe he shot the first person, and as the other people woke up, he went and shot those people. He said during the trials and during the investigation, he said that voices in the house told him to murder his family. So that could be seen as already evidence of some sort of evil spirit guiding his actions. He was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. So this particular story leads people to believe that the house is haunted because, people who die a violent death, that's like one of the classic instigators of a haunting. And just out of curiosity, I'm looking it up, and Ronald Joseph DeFeo Jr. has passed away in 2021. Just out of curiosity, I looked at that. Let's see. Oh, here we go. So here's from Wikipedia. Maybe, I'll do this during the after hours. I don't want to take up too much room with this particular case, so we'll get on with it here. All right. So anyways, that horrific crime, the murder of 6 people, probably caused a haunting, and it's a big part of the Amityville legend. So after the murders, and hopefully after everything was cleared out of there, the Lutz family bought the house in 1975. So about a year, in December of 1975, about a year after the murders, give or take, George and Kathy Lutz bought the house, and they got it for a bargain price. I think I saw somewhere that it was like they got it for like $70,000 or something. Nobody wanted it because it was a murder house. I tell you what, that's not going to fly anymore. In today's market, people would still buy a murder house. That's how bad housing is, right? If somebody's like, hey, you want this house? It's half off. People murdered in there. It's probably haunted. And, bad stuff's going to happen to you. Like, I don't care. I'll take it. I don't care if it's got poltergeist hauntings. I will take it. So they moved in with their 3 children, George and Kathy. They moved in with their 3 children. They lived there for 28 days before fleeing the house because of a haunting. So when they first moved in on December 18th, 1975, they moved in, the DeFeo's furniture was still in the house. They had this part's kind of controversial. The first day there, they had a priest named Father Pecoraro bless the house, and when he did so, they heard a disembodied voice say, "Get out." And the priest felt a slap and developed blisters on his hands afterwards. So there have been disputes about certain, I won't go through all the details because I want to get to other cases. Some of the details of the case have been disputed after the fact. Some people say that the priest was not named that, he was named something else. Some people say that in interviews, the priest claims that none of this stuff happened. Other interviews he did. So some of this stuff is controversial. I'm not going to cover all the ins of it. I would cover that stuff if we're doing a full case file, but we're going to do the short version. We're going to do the short version of this case so that we can get to other cases and do an overview of a few of the major, most famous poltergeist hauntings, I should say. All right, over the next couple of days, the family felt cold spots in different parts of rooms throughout the house. They had the heater on, it was working, but they would go to certain spots and those spots would feel extremely cold. They also noticed a strange odor of perfume drifting through the house. Now that one, I mean, if there were still belongings and furniture from the previous family there, that one could pretty easily be explained, right? George started becoming obsessed with keeping the fire going because it was so cold. He also started waking up at exactly 3:15 a.m. every night. He didn't know it at the time, but that's exactly when the DeFeo murders happened. So something was waking him up. He doesn't know what. On the 4th day that they were there, flies swarmed the sewing room, and that's where DeFeo's younger brother was murdered. There's actually, I've seen the movie. There's actually the scene with the flies, pretty creepy. Yeah, so I saw the movie when I was a kid, but check it out if you're interested. I remember it being pretty good, but who knows? I haven't seen it since I was a kid, so I might have misremembered it. Anyways, they clear out the flies and they come back right away. They just can't get rid of them, but there's no reason for them to be there. There's nothing in the room that would draw them. They're just there. On days 5 and 6, George starts having strange behavior changes. He becomes short-tempered and doesn't want to spend time with the rest of the family. Kathy starts having nightmares about the murders and starts seeing visions of the victims. They also start seeing black stains in the toilets and sinks around the house. Their daughter, Missy, develops an imaginary friend that she says looks like a pig and is named Jody. And this pig-like being has glowing red eyes, apparently. Man, if one of my 5-year-old kids, I mean, they're not 5 anymore, but if they had a glowing-eyed pig entity friend, I might have a problem with that. I don't want you hanging out with those weirdos with the glowing red eyes. That's not good, you know? You don't want to hang out with troublemakers like that. On days 7, 8, and 9, George started to see Jody's glowing eyes outside of Missy's window. They also noticed hoof prints in the snow outside. And some skeptics have looked it up and said there's no snow at that time. But then again, maybe there was. We don't know. Activity around this time started to escalate. There was movement around the house. Doors and windows would slam shut violently. They would hear loud noises like a mysterious marching sound echoing through the house at night. So things were starting to escalate at this point. On day 10, Kathy experienced a violent levitation while in bed and said that an unseen force embraced her. They had rosary beads and crucifixes on the walls in the house, and those started to fall from the walls or become inverted to, be upside down crosses. And also on the 10th day, George starts to feel drawn to the boathouse. He feels like there's something there, but he doesn't know what it is. On the 11th day, it started to escalate even more. Stuff got even weirder. Kathy was attacked by an unseen force and got welts on her chest, so she was being physically struck by something that she couldn't see. The family also had a really weird green slime that oozed from all of the keyholes and walls. Ugh. What is that? Don't want to know. Those ghosts are getting a little too happy in there, right? And George started to hear a chorus of voices chanting in the middle of the night. Over the next few days, they had a couple of other strange events, like seeing shadows moving in the hallway and hearing heavy footsteps. Kathy saw a demonic face in the fireplace bricks. Ugh, no thanks. And the children had their beds shaking at night. Kind of like an earthquake, but there was no earthquake. Around the 19th day, the Lutzes invited a psychic over to check the place out, to triage what's going on there. Is there anything you can do for us, Mr. or Mrs. Psychic? So the psychic friend comes over and leaves because they said that they sensed a violent energy. The activity got really bad starting on the 25th day that they were there. At this point, objects were moving around constantly, beds were shaking, a dark mist was in the living room. Kathy levitated again, and George thought that she was possessed by something. They all started sleeping together in one room, afraid for their lives. And at this point, why are they still in the house? I would move out at this point. I don't know. I don't know about you guys, but no thank you. And on the final day, or the final night of the house, on the 28th day that they had lived there, this is January 14th, 1976. The final night was pure chaos. The entire house shook violently, doors slamming, unseen forces pounding on the walls and the floors. Kathy saw a demonic figure with cloven feet in her bedroom, and at this point they had had enough, and they fled the house, leaving all of their belongings behind. They never spent another night in that house. A couple of things happened after the fact that are kind of interesting. The famous paranormal investigators, Ed and Lorraine Warren, I should do an episode on them. Maybe I'll put that on the list for next time, maybe. That might be kind of fun. Anyways, Ed and Lorraine Warren visited the house and said that it was infested with evil. But on the other hand, skeptics went to the house and they found no physical evidence of any damage or of any of the things that the Lutzes described whatsoever. So, could this be fake? Could it be a hoax? Could it be maybe a psychological phenomenon? I don't know. I suppose if ghosts can break things, they can also fix them. Anyways, one thing led to another, and they sold their story to Jay Anson, and the book was released in 1977, and the story became one of the most famous ghost or poltergeist stories ever. After the fact, different claims have come out, over the years. Some people say that the events were all made up. Maybe some of the events were real, some of them were embellished or made up. None of them were made up. Everything was true. Rumors that the parents were into the occult and were doing strange things in the house, or maybe they weren't. There's a lot to unpack here, especially, investigations that happened after the events. But that would take a much longer episode. Maybe I'll put this one on the list and we'll do it maybe next year. Who knows? Or sometime in the future, when it's time to do some sort of ghost story or paranormal story. But from what I can tell, I'm kind of on the fence about this one. There does seem to be evidence. There are people who came out after the fact and said, yeah, we kind of made it up. But either way, it's a pretty good story. It's a famous story for a reason. All right, on to the next one. The next case, the Enfield poltergeist case, is probably the best known poltergeist case out of all of them. Probably even more well known, at least for people who are into this sort of thing. Probably even more well known than the Amityville case. Although your average casual person might be more aware of the Amityville case. So the Enfield poltergeist has inspired many movies and books and things. It's a pretty prominent case. It happened in Enfield, North London, between 1977 and 1979. And it was not just a local story, this was a global story. Some people say that not only is it the best known, it's also the best documented poltergeist case. Although, of course, as you might expect, skeptics say that it was all just a hoax. All right, this house is at 284 Green Street, Enfield, London, England. It involves Peggy Hodgson, Hodgson, who is a single mother, and her 4 children, Margaret, Janet, Johnny, and Billy. It all began when Peggy Hodgson, heard loud banging noises coming from her daughter's room. She went to check on her daughter, and she saw that the daughter's dresser was moving across the floor all by itself. So it's kind of weird when, people say that it was hoaxed. How did a child move their dresser? Probably a pretty heavy dresser because, in the 70s, I'm guessing they built these things out of real wood, not just the cheap materials they use these days. But you never know. So at first she thought somebody was playing a prank, so she pushed the dresser back to where it was supposed to be, but it moved again. That kicked off the whole event. That was the first event. And then it started to escalate over the next few days They started hearing knocking sounds, scratching sounds, furniture started moving all over the house, and toys started to be thrown around. Peggy didn't know what was going on, so she called the police, who arrived, and they saw a chair move several feet all by itself. And this is actually in the official reports. So that makes this case a heck of a lot more interesting in some ways than the Amityville case. Because if you have a case involving a family, which, by the way, the parents of the Amityville case, they've passed away now, but they maintained throughout their entire life that what they said was true. They never recanted what they said. But here we have a third party documenting something, and I feel like in general the police are going to be extremely reluctant to document any sort of haunting type activity. So anyways, the police came and they saw the chair move, and they probably had no idea what to think of it. So over time, they began to notice that knocking sounds seemed to be responding to what people were saying, as if the ghost or whatever it was trying to communicate. And the 11-year-old Janet seemed to be the center of the activity. So it seemed to happen the most when she was in the room or when she was around. And Janet herself seemed to make strange vocalizations and growling sounds. At one point, the voice started to sound like a man's voice. It was a deep, gravelly voice, and it identified itself as Bill Wilkins. Bill Wilkins, speaking through Janet, said that he was a man who had died in the house years earlier after suffering a brain hemorrhage in the living room. And surprisingly, this is really weird, but this detail has actually been confirmed by Bill Wilkins's son. And this was confirmed after the haunting, but still, I suppose you could look up the records of that happening to report it. I mean, that's not outside the realm of possibility, but it's still pretty weird. Now, there are recordings of this voice, of Bill Wilkins's voice. It was recorded by paranormal researchers, and it's said that the voice is too guttural for a young girl to be faking, but to counterbalance that, speech experts did say that it could have been produced by the girl. I'd have to listen to it myself, which I didn't do. I'm taking summary notes because, I'm doing a bunch of cases, or I'm doing 3 cases, so I didn't hunt that recording down. Well, actually, let me pause this. I'll hunt it down, and then I'll make a decision to see what my opinion is. All right, I found the actual recording. It's on YouTube. It's about a 5-minute video, and holy crap, that is creepy. It doesn't sound like a voice that an 11-year-old girl could make. That doesn't mean it's not possible, but it is super creepy. Super creepy. Go check it out if you want to have some nightmares. This case was investigated by Maurice Gross and Guy Lyon Playfair from the Society for Psychical Research. They recorded over 180 hours of audio, took lots of notes, photographs, took lots of testimony, and they personally saw the furniture moving, objects being thrown, and the girls levitating. There are even photos of objects levitating and of Janet levitating. So that's, audio only. I can't really show those pictures, but they are available online if you want to go check those out. Gross and Playfair said that they thought something paranormal was happening, but they also felt that it was possible some aspects of the case had been faked by the children for attention. So throughout this whole case, there were multiple witnesses. There were neighbors, like the police officers, and news reporters or journalists came to see these things, and they saw objects moving on their own. So this is it's a really interesting case, and it's just, like I said, it's inspired movies and whatnot. And it's a good one, man. I think this is probably a more solid case than the Amityville Horror. And I would like to do an episode on this. I'll have to put it on the list. So now we got two that I want to put on the list now, because I would love to do a much longer version of this one. As it is, we're doing the short version so I can get to our third topic. All right, the last case I'm going to do today is called The Bell Witch. This is an older story and also a really famous story. You probably have heard about it if you're into paranormal type stuff. It centers around the Bell family of Adams, Tennessee in the early 1800s, and it's often described as the only case in U.S. history where a ghost supposedly caused a man's death. This one happened between 1817 and 1821. So this is a little bit of an older case. The main witness slash victim of this case was the father, John Bell Sr., although it also involves his wife, Lucy, and their children. It all began in 1817 when John Bell, who was a prosperous farmer at the time, was walking his property when he saw a strange animal. It looked like a dog with a rabbit's head. He shot at it, but the creature simply vanished. That night, the family heard knocking on the walls and doors, a scratching sound that seemed to be coming from somewhere inside the house, but they weren't sure where. They heard chains dragging across the floor, and they also heard whispering voices. Yeah, I mean, why would you stay in the house? If I hear any one of those things, well, knocking on walls and doors, I would just assume it's somebody pulling a prank, so that wouldn't bother me. But the other stuff, scratching sounds, chains dragging, and whispering voices, I would not stay in that house. I gotta be honest. Maybe I'm a coward, but, you know, that would scare me. I'd be like, okay, time for a hotel. Bye. Have fun haunting an empty house, ghost. Stupid ghost. Over time, the noises grew louder and more distinct. And at some point, whatever it was, the ghost or poltergeist, began speaking out loud and identified itself as Kate. And there was a local woman named Kate Batts who, it was rumored that she was cheated out of a land deal by John Bell. So Kate, if that's the ghost's name, or maybe the neighbor playing a prank, said that she intended to kill John Bell and torment his family, especially the daughter Betsy. The entity or poltergeist began repeating conversations from distant places. It sang hymns and quoted scripture. It predicted future events accurately and spoke in multiple voices and dialects, sometimes having an argument with itself. Or maybe there was more than one spirit. There's different interpretations. Some people think it was one spirit having a conversation with itself. Other people say that it was different entities. We don't know. The Bell haunting became a national story. Lots of people went to visit the house and check it out and see if it was really haunted or not. Even Andrew Jackson, who would go on to become the President of the United States, visited the house. Allegedly. We don't know for sure, but it's rumored. And the story goes that he arrived, he looked around, but they fled, him and his friends, or whoever was with him, fled in terror after their wagon wouldn't move until Kate allowed it. The victim who got the worst of it appeared to be Betsy, John's young daughter. She experienced disembodied attacks like slapping, having her hair pulled, and being pinched by invisible hands. She had red marks appear on her skin in front of witnesses, so it was a spontaneous injury. I mean, that would be really hard to fake. I suppose not impossible, but people would watch in real time as she became injured. And by 1820, John Bell became very sick. People who went to visit him were told by Kate, by the ghost or poltergeist, that she was going to kill him, and she also said that she was making his illness worse. On December 20, 1820, John Bell passed away. After he died, a strange vial of liquid was found near his bed. They gave a drop to the family cat to test it. I don't know why you would do that, that poor cat. But the cat died right away. They heard the voice of Kate laughing, and it said, "I gave old Jack a big dose of that last night." And at his funeral, attendees heard Kate singing and laughing. Over time, the ghost or poltergeist or witch or whatever it was slowly died down. The events became less frequent. And she said she would return in 7 years. According to the family, briefly in 1828, 7 years later, noises did come back for a small amount of time and then stopped altogether. So whether any of this is real or not, it has become a big part of local legends in the Tennessee area. It's a story that's stuck around for a pretty long time. These days, there's the Bell Witch Cave on the old Bell property, which is open for tours if you want to go check that out, although I'm not sure that anything interesting involving the story happened there. I think most of the stuff happened in the house. Maybe that's where the ghost was hanging out in the ghost's downtime. I don't know. A lot of people think that this was a genuine supernatural poltergeist haunting or some other curse, maybe from a witch, maybe from the neighbor named Kate, I don't think they were direct neighbors, but she was in the area. Other people have proposed that it could have been mass hysteria or some sort of psychological episode. And other people think that it could have just been an entire fabrication, pranks and hoaxes portrayed by the family and the children of the family. John Bell's death it's not exactly clear as far as like historical records go. The legend is one thing, but we don't know for sure if he died from poisoning or if it was just natural causes. It's not unusual for local areas to have a sort of a witch folktale, for that locality. So that's not necessarily unusual, but this is definitely an unusual story. So the Bell Witch or Bell Poltergeist, usually it's referred to as the Bell Witch, but it has a lot of similarities to poltergeist cases, which is why I included it. It went on, just like other cases, to inspire, books, movies, video games, all sorts of things. The most well-known probably is the Blair Witch Project, which was inspired by this story, but there are others. All right, and those are the 3 cases I wanted to cover today. There's a lot more to these stories, and I've put them on the list. Who knows? Maybe I'll get a chance to cover them in depth in the future. Thank you guys so much for listening, and until next time, keep it spooky.